and I met this guy who was really into graffiti and hip hop, and so he kind of put me onto listening to hip hop and skateboarding and graffiti, and so those were kind of, I was like, oh wow, so I was super into that, and I would just skate around the city in the alleys and look for graffiti. This guy Radar, he was really cool. He transferred the job, like, there was, because he realized, like, oh, this is a real responsibility. This crew of B-girls is something new. I'm gonna transfer the responsibility over to B-boy. Well, he was Shockwave back then, but now he's B-boy Omegatron from Tactical Crew. Was my second teacher, and he taught us classes for several years, off and on. And then he kind of, like, it would be like he would be teaching, and then would show up for class one day, and he just wasn't there anymore. Like, sometimes it was like the studio or something happened in his life, and then he could, it was just like, it was sometimes kind of hit or miss. We loved his classes, though. He was definitely one of the first people who put me onto battling. I think maybe one of the first battles I entered was one of his battles, Perfect Execution at the Rock'em in the early 2000s.
Wow.
So yeah. So, but I loved battling. When I started battling, and I really enjoyed it. It was really, like, challenging. I used to compete a lot as an athlete, so I think I could, like, when I started breaking, what I loved about it was that it's so demanding physically. I used to be a competitive athlete, so I could apply my training as an athlete to how I would train as a B-boy or B-girl. But what I actually had to learn as a B-girl was all the other aspects, like musicality and feeling and style. And that kind of, it's interesting because that came later. It's like I've been breaking for so long, but I feel like, oh man, there were a lot of lost years there where I was lost. Like, there were so many years in my career where I was just coaching myself, or I didn't have a teacher or a mentor. So it's like kind of like trail breaking. You're like trailblazing in a way, like trying to find your way. I'm just really lucky that at many different stages of my B-girl career or B-girl life, I had new mentors or new people or new influence that would kind of come into my life and my career and, like, help me and give me new knowledge. So super grateful. Like, I just want to pay respect and dues to all of my teachers and mentors who helped me, because without them, I definitely wouldn't have been able to continue. At one point in my B-girl career, like, I was going through personal difficulty in my life. At one point I was married, and we were living in we had no money. Basically, we were really broke. We were really poor, and I was having difficulties with my ex-husband as well. So just in terms of, like, abusive behavior and stuff. And so it was a really difficult time in my life, and I couldn't afford to take classes. But my teacher, B-boy Freezer from Flow Rock, original Frolock crew, and now he's part of Montreal Street Dancers, he let me take classes for free for 2 years. And he was one of the teachers who first started teaching me a lot of, like, foundational knowledge and, like, influence from New York or flavor, like, really, like, American style breaking. So I really appreciated that knowledge and was, like, grateful for that gift. Because if it wasn't for him at that difficult time in my life, anything could have happened. I could have, like, easily quit breaking or had a different outcome in my life. So super grateful for that. And so I always try, in my own way, to find ways that I could pay it back, to my students or to the community in whatever way I can. Because I think that's such an important thing that shouldn't be lost in our culture and our community, is this idea that, it's not an individualistic pursuit. And this dance and this culture, it has changed so many people's lives. Like, we've so many of my peers and I have had the chance to open up and talk about our path and our history and our experiences, and to say, like, so many of us would say, like, hip hop and B-boy and B-girl, like, it saved us. It saved our lives. It really kept us on a path where we could have something that would hold us to something that was true to us, like a way to express. And also, like, what's great about breaking, what I liked about it compared to other dances, is that you could express a part of yourself that wasn't always pretty. Is that you could put whatever, like, stuff whatever you had experienced in your life, you could just put it in the dance. You could just let it go in the dance and get out your feelings or your frustration, whatever, in the dance. And and that's how this dance started. To me, that's what the essence of the dance was, is that it was, and the culture was an outlet. It was an expression, like a way of creating something from nothing and like creating beauty out of ugliness, you know, like from oppression came this beautiful art form, you know? And so it's like, I think that plays out in all of our stories, in all of our personal stories. We can almost everybody could say like, yeah, breaking it did this for me, you know, despite all of the negative aspects that we may have experienced in the culture as well. There's always this aspect where it's like, yeah, I was able to canalize, I was able to put myself in it. And other dances, it's like I never was attracted to dances like ballet and things like that, because I felt like, oh, you had to be too perfect or too pretty or too like, you know, and like in breaking, you could, you know, it's the Muggsy, you could have some like some rawness, some like some grit, you know, in your character. And I think that's important. It's important for us to be able to express all aspects of ourselves, not just what is pleasing to others, you know. And breaking amazing. Has that.
I don't mean to cut you off, my bad. But
no, go ahead, please.
It's amazing that you say that. Like, we sound a lot similar in that aspect of like, there's parts of you, like you said, that weren't necessarily pretty, but they get to exist in the dance, right? Mm-hmm. So I went through a real crazy period, probably in my late teens, early 20s, right? And to what you're saying is like, when you see me battle, you can totally see what I'm talking about. And that person is locked into breaking, right? Mm-hmm. So, because that person, they still exist within you, right?
Yeah.
But through maturity, some growth, so on and so forth, you don't express in that way, right?
Yeah.
So for me, you know, people think like, oh, he's just this kind of person. It's like, no, that's a piece of me that has not went away. But if I can't get it out in this version, it might come out into my real life again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of, it's amazing that you said that. And, you know, it's a great place for it, because I was telling somebody this before, right? I said, when you were like, for me, it was like about trying to be not the tough guy, but my reactions were, we'll just say my reactions were to things what they were, right? So with that being said, like when you hear people talk about when they were like alcoholics or if they were drug addicts, right? And they talk about, oh, you know, I'm a surviving, it could be 20 years later, they're like, I'm a surviving drug addict and, you know, every day is a struggle. And you're like, what are you talking about? You haven't seen a drug in 20 years, right? But it's true. You know, these parts of you, they never go away. You have just grown past them. But in a moment of weakness, they can always pop right back out and just be on the forefront of who you are. So breaking allows you to put it on the back burner of who you are, but it's still part of who you are. So sorry,
yeah, definitely.
Was a long drawn out.
Yeah, and I think no, I really appreciate that, you know, because that's part of the conversation, is like sharing those things. You know, it's like we share a lot on the dance floor, but I find that, you know, it's interesting because I would see people in my scene for like 10 years. We'd always just say hi, but when we would go on a trip or we would have an experience together, like go and like work towards on a project, or, you know, anytime you get to have that opportunity where you're doing an intensive experience with somebody, you know, even in 2006, I went to the Red Bull Beat Riders.
This is a program that gives opportunity for kids to learn from the masters or the originators.
The main point behind creating this event was to give the opportunity to not only educate young dancers from across the world about dance and movement, but about the culture, the history, and the business that goes behind this industry.
It starts with loving the culture, not just the dance.
These instructors, you know, our teachers, they wanted us to become better people, you know what I mean, individuals, you know what I mean? It's more than dancing.
In 78, 79, when I started, I'm traditionally a b-boy, man. B-boy is my lifestyle, and that's the dance that I live. We appreciate the opportunity, man. Red Bull is giving us an opportunity. We're giving Red Bull some quality stuff from the hood, but these kids are really the ones that are really gonna have a great week here and explore a lot of different activities, physical activities, and that's what it's all about.
You know, and like I was there with like 30 other people. Like I still know, and I'm friends with some of those people. They're my beat rider brothers and sisters. You know, it's like those experiences kind of mark you, and then you get to know the person for who they are off, like, you know, beyond the Cypher, right?
There you go.
Right?
Message. No, I was kidding.
So I think, and that's part of I feel like that's such an important part of our culture. It's those moments outside the jam when everybody's talking, when you go to eat after the jam, and then you sit down and you have a meal with those people that you maybe battled against, or, you know, like that's so important, those moments. And interesting enough, I did like a symposium recently with Bgirl Rockefeller, and she was talking about that. She's like, we need to keep creating those moments in our community, in our culture, where we're not always competing, where we're not always battling. You know, there has to be like a multitude of ways that we can gather, not just in this competitive format, which is important. You know, it is part of our culture and our dance. It always has been. And so it's just like we need to maintain all the other aspects, like the shows, the artistry, the choreographers, anybody, these interviews. This is all part of the culture, because we are living and being part of a culture that has always been like a passed on tradition, like a nonverbal tradition. You know, you think of like other cultures around the world, and I always think of like the original people, because I feel that breaking and hip hop has echoes of the first people of the earth. Like, so when you think about the way that the first original people of the earth were living, to me, this is what we experience. We are gifted to experience in hip hop and in b-girling and b-boying, is aspects of those original cultures where communication was nonverbal, where tradition was passed on through behavior and music and dance and ritual. So that's really an essential part of our culture, whether people realize it or not. And so to create any kind of like documenting or being able to record the culture and maintain the stories. It's the stories that make up our culture, you know, and those stories have so often been told verbally to people and passed on. And so now we're having all kinds of new media forms. We're having all kinds of new ways to share stories and share the culture. That's like, so I think it's really essential as we move forward into the new eras and the new ways that breaking is coming to present in the world. You know, we have to maintain, and it's like, and I guess that's kind of like gatekeeping and like really maintaining what it is that we believe is essential as part of the culture, because that essence is necessary for it not to become a monster, you know, because there is always the potential for something to go in a direction and you'd be like, man, I don't even recognize this thing that I used to do anymore. Sometimes I feel that way. Like I'm looking at breaking or the way that people are dancing or the way that things are going. And I know that people maybe from my generation and even older might feel the same. Like we're looking at it and we're like, man, I just don't get it. I don't, you know, like I still participate, you know, like I did the Red Bull BC1 in Canada this year. So it was the first time we ever had Red Bull BC1 for the B-Girls in Canada. So I was like, oh, for sure. Hell yeah.
You're like, I'm in there.
You know? Yeah. So because we didn't have those opportunities before. So in my whole career, you know, like I said, we'd have to go somewhere else to try and get that. So yeah, like that's, you know, I don't know where I went on a tangent. Oh,
it's
no,
okay.
Chris.
It's okay. Tangents are good. These are just conversations between, this is just two people, two dancers talking. So if a tangent happens, it happens. You know, a lot of jewels in the tangents.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So
I do have a question though, and you could
Sure.
correct me if I'm wrong and fill in the blanks or what have you.
I kind of went solo. Then I eventually started a crew which had guys in it. which was called All or Nothing Crew. Strangely enough, I've always been kind of the person who started the crew. Like, I think I was definitely one of the people who started Elemental 5. I started Solid State. I started All or Nothing Crew, which was with my former teacher.
For more quality content from Beyond the Cypher with Illskillz, don't forget to press the like and subscribe buttons. Also, feel free to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Beyond the Cypher. Let us know how we're doing down in the comment section. And to make sure you don't miss anything from the channel, smash that notification bell. We appreciate the love and support. Peace. Until the next episode.